Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another edition of UCF Football Now. I'm Mike Bianchi, sports columnist of the Orlando Sentinel. You know who that is. That's the UCF insider, the beat writer for the Orlando Sentinel and OrlandoSentinel.com. That's Jason Beede. We have a lot to talk about this week. UCF coming off that hurricane-delayed conference opener against SMU. A huge win for UCF, 41-19. We saw John Rice Plumlee, Jason, UCF's quarterback against the Georgia Tech game. I think he had 40-something yards passing, and then against SMU had over 300 yards passing. First question for you, Jason Beede. Who is the real John Rice Plumlee? Is it the one we saw against Georgia Tech, or is it the one we saw against SMU?
I think it's somewhere in the middle, probably. That might not be the answer you're looking for, but if I had to guess, I think the real John Rice Plumlee is somewhere in the middle. The one thing that has been consistent about him is his ability to run the football. That's not going away. So the fact that he continues to have this roller coaster of a season. This happened earlier in the year. He didn't have a good game against Louisville, and then he throws for 300 at FAU. Is he going to throw for 50 yards against Temple on Thursday night? Probably not, right? But I think for him to find consistency, they have to keep the offense simple. Gus Malzahn loves to remind us that he's still learning the offense because he's a transfer and he's still getting comfortable out there. Maybe, just maybe, this week will be the week where we see back-to-back consistency, strong performances from John Rice Plumlee.
One thing that hasn't been very inconsistent, actually has been pretty consistent this year, is the UCF defense. Obviously, against SMU, they shut down SMU in the second half, except for that last-second touchdown where SMU is trying to build up its stats. How good is this UCF defense? Are they the best defense in the state right now?
I think so. I mean, I think you can make the point that maybe they're one of the best defenses in the country. I don't think they're the top, but they're certainly top 15 in a number of key statistics. Nationally, they're number one red zone defense. I know that. They just seem to have a way of pushed up against the wall in the red zone, and they don't give up many points in the red zone. They haven't given up more than 20 points in a game this season. They've only given up, I think less than, I'm trying to do the math.
That's dangerous when a sports writer is trying to do the math spontaneously.
They've only given up one touchdown all season long in the fourth quarter. So whether they're in the red zone or the fourth quarter, UCF's defense just has a way of locking down and locking in, and they're a really good defense. They're legit for sure.
Yeah, I would have said Florida State until this past week, where Florida State just collapsed against NC State, even though NC State had a backup quarterback in there who couldn't throw the ball, actually only threw one pass from the third quarter on, and Florida State still allowed NC State to win. So I'll agree with you. I'll go with UCF as well. All right, let's play a little something or nothing. Is it something or nothing that Johnny Richardson only got 3 carries against SMU? Are you kidding me?
It is obviously something. It's really questionable what's happening with him. You almost have to wonder if he's healthy or not. Gus Malzahn hasn't said anything about that, but the fact that you see Isaiah Bowser continue to get carries, RJ Harvey, of course, is a great story. He's back, so maybe there's too many chefs in the kitchen, but Johnny Richardson is legit. He has great speed, of course. We've seen him in the open field, but it is clearly something that he only got 3 carries versus SMU.
I totally agree. In fact, when we're sitting there in the press box watching the game, what am I always saying to you? How about getting Johnny Richardson more carries? I say that about 10 times per game. So I agree with you. It is something. All right, is it something or nothing? I just referenced this. That SMU called a timeout to score with 1 second left, despite the game being a blowout.
Yeah, I think a lot of fans might say this is something, but to me, it's nothing. Every second string, third string player was out in the field. I think they have a freshman quarterback. They were trying to get some snaps. To me, it's nothing. It is what it is. It's football.
I agree. Your backups have to play like it's a real game as well. All right, is it something or nothing that USF lost again to a tough opponent? Of course, they gave the Gators everything they wanted 2 or 3 weeks ago, and then this past weekend, man, Cincinnati had to score late to beat USF. Is USF better than we thought?
Well, they're better than we thought. I do think that, but I still think this is nothing because they're losing the games. I mean, they're not. Yes, it's a close loss, but a loss is a loss regardless. So clearly, the team has some fight to it, but they're still not getting over the hump there in
Yeah, and they're
Tampa.
also getting blown out by some. I mean, East Carolina. What was it, 41-3 at one point against East Carolina? All right. Temple game coming up Thursday night. A quick game preview. This will be the 100th game at the Bounce House. UCF opens as a 25-point favorite. Any doubt that they'll beat Temple?
I don't think there's any doubt they'll beat Temple. I don't know about 25 points. I was pretty surprised at the result. I think we all were. We didn't expect that second half against SMU. So who knows? I mean, I know last season was a game at Temple that really helped UCF's offense get going at that part of the season. But Temple, look, they've only given up 16 points a game to opponents. Now they've only scored 15 points on offense, so they're not really a high-powered offense. But defensively, maybe they're a little bit stronger than we're expecting them to be. But no doubt UCF should not have problems with the Owls.
Considering what UCF did to SMU, a pretty darn good team, and Cincinnati struggling with USF, are we now saying that UCF should be the favorite in the American Athletic Conference?
I'm not so sure if UCF should be considered the favorite. I don't know if there is a favorite at this point. I know Houston had to come back in the fourth quarter at Memphis. Memphis, maybe if they had won that game, would be considered the favorite. Tulane is sitting in second place or third place in the conference with UCF. They're a surprise. I think Cincinnati looks beatable. I'm not sure if there's a clear favorite right now, Mike.
Good point. Yeah, Tulane is sneaky good right now. So, yeah, watch out for that game later in the season, UCF fans. All right, let's do a little rapid fire, shall we? Let's start with the Big 12's new commissioner, Brett Yormark. He was scheduled to be at UCF a couple of weeks ago. That got postponed. Do we have a new date, and when will Brett Yormark be visiting UCF, and what will be the purpose of that visit?
Yeah, this is really like a tour for him to see all the new schools incoming and the current members. He's been everywhere else but UCF. Matt Marshall and I did some reporting on this late last week. He is supposed to come. He's currently scheduled October 26th, which is a Wednesday, and he's going to actually be at UCF for the first time, take a tour of campus, and it's going to be interesting to see, what he has to say about potential realignment and what his conference wants to do moving forward. So October 26th is the new date. We were just talking about USF, Mike. What do you think of the news that the Warren I-4 game won't be played on Black Friday this year, snapping a 5-year streak?
Yeah, I think it's kind of sad because, even though it's only been 5 or 6 years, it was still sort of becoming a tradition. But, hey, the American Athletic Conference has to do what they want to do. When that game was originally scheduled on Black Friday, that was the big rivalry in the American Athletic Conference. Now, since USF stinks, it's not really a great game. Quite frankly, Cincinnati and Tulane, which will be on Black Friday this year, I think that is the better game. So I don't blame the American Athletic Conference for giving that game the more coveted TV spot. All right, you mentioned Houston. They are off to a slow start. Obviously, did you see the comeback against Memphis? And what's going on with Houston?
Yeah, I was watching that game. I was kind of falling asleep the other night watching it, but then all of a sudden it was a close game and they got the onside kick and came down and won the game. And you feel for Memphis. I think it was their second time in the last, going back to 2015, I think they had a similar game like that where Houston came back and broke the hearts of Memphis. So look, I think when you have a quarterback like Clayton Tune, really talented guy, you have to wonder what's going on in Houston. So it's interesting to see that play out. Mike, did you see Gabe Davis's 2 touchdowns on Sunday? The first one was 98 yards on the second play, and then later on, he had a one-handed grab that was for 60 yards.
I did not see it live. I was at the Orlando City game on Sunday, but I was keeping track of my fantasy football team online, and my opponent had Gabe Davis on his roster, except he had him on the bench. All right.
Oh, my goodness.
He had Gabe Davis on the bench. So I'm like texting him as Gabe Davis. At one point, I think he had 2 catches for 160 yards, and both of them were touchdowns. Yeah, Gabe Davis. That was unbelievable what he's done. Obviously, what he did in the playoffs last year, he has emerged as a big-time, big play wide receiver in the NFL, and good for him because he's a great guy and he's a big UCF supporter, even though he's no longer playing at UCF. All right, Georgia Tech. UCF fans were sort of grumbling a couple of weeks ago because they only beat Georgia Tech by 17 points. Well, since then, Georgia Tech has won 2 straight games after firing their coach, Jeff Collins. Does that Georgia Tech win look even more impressive now?
Yeah, I think so. I was really surprised to see them beat a ranked Pitt. I know they were 24th, but ranked nonetheless to beat Pitt. I think they beat Duke this past weekend.
Yeah.
So clearly Brett Key, former UCF assistant coach, at one point maybe considered head coach in waiting. He maybe making a run for the job at Georgia Tech. I think it does strengthen that win for UCF for sure. Are UCF fans, Mike, are they rooting for Josh Heupel to win a national title at Tennessee? What do you think about that? Big game against Alabama.
Has the Volunteers looking good, one of the top offenses in the country. They're 5-0 now. They just waylaid, just killed LSU over the weekend, and now they got Alabama coming up this Saturday. I think UCF fans should be rooting for Hype. He was here 3 years. I thought he did a good job at UCF. Then he goes off to Tennessee. They should root for him, but for whatever reason, I've talked about that before on this show. I don't know why UCF fans never embraced Josh Heupel. So I'm going to go no. They will not be rooting for him. What do you think?
No, I don't think they're rooting for him. I think they're definitely watching. They might not want to admit it, but they're definitely paying attention to him.
Absolutely. All right, every week we do the UCF Fan of the Week to end our show. Jason, who do we got this week?
It's actually most of the fan base. It's more than just one fan. It's the whole fan base showing up on a Wednesday night. A postponement because of the hurricane. You never know what that crowd's going to look like. I think the announced attendance was 27 or 28,000 people. So solid crowd for sure. I was impressed. I have another fan of the week, Mike. I'm surprising you here. I got an email from a reader the other day that said I was both smarter and more handsome than Mike Bianchi.
Well, you should be. You're about 30 years younger than me. You should. First of all, your brain is fresh and hasn't been tainted by multiple beers over the years, and you're young. So yeah, I totally agree with that reader. You are much better looking and much smarter than I am. So absolutely,
I agree.
Of course you did. All right, but the question is, will you be this good looking and this smart when you're my age? I have my doubts about that, Jason Beede.
I'm only lucky if I am.
Yes. All right, that'll do it for another edition of UCF Football Now. Do not forget, we are on every week. Every Tuesday, you can find us at OrlandoSentinel.com. We also have our own YouTube channel. So tell your friends, tell 10 of your friends, because this is your show, UCF football fans. For Jason Beede, I'm Mike Bianchi. We'll talk to you next week on another edition of UCF Football Now.